Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please hit that like button because it's free and thank you so much. 1986 Icelandic folktale. Father of 18 in Elfland. Interesting title. Like I say, I've never read these myself, so it's all new to me guys as well. It happened on a certain farm one summer that all the people were out in the fields except the lady of the house. She was home doing her chores along with her 3-year-old son. Up at that time, the boy had grown and developed well. His speech was already fluent, and he was intelligent and exceptionally promising. Now, since the woman had her household work to do, besides looking after the child, the time came when she had to leave him alone temporarily while she took the milk troughs to a nearby brook. This was usually not something she would do, and she did return shortly afterward and spoke to the child. He cried and howled in an angry, wretched manner, the like of which she had never heard before. Previously, the boy had been very even-tempered and of a gentle, obedient disposition, but all she got out of him now was ugly screams and howls. This went on for some time. The child never uttered a word, and was so fretful and peevish that the woman didn't know how to react to this change in his behaviour. What's more, he stopped growing and began to behave like he knew nothing at all. All this grieved the mother, and in her desperation, she went to see a woman nearby who had a reputation for prudence and knowledge, recounting to her the misfortune that had befallen her. The neighbour asked how long ago precisely the child had first displayed this peculiar behaviour, and how she thought it had come about. The boy's mother told her everything exactly as it happened. When the wise neighbour had heard all the circumstances, she said, "Hasn't it occurred to you, my dear, that the boy might be of a changeling? In my opinion, he has exchanged while you left him alone in the doorway." "I don't know," said the mother. "Can you tell me how to find out for certain?" "I think I can," said the neighbour. "Leave the child unattended some day, and make sure that he comes across something that is an absolute novelty to him. He is sure to say something if he sees no one around, but you'll have to eavesdrop to learn what he says. And if you find the boy's speech strange and suspicious, then spank him without mercy until something happens." With this, the two women broke off their talk, and the boy's mother thanked the neighbour for the good advice. Back home, she placed a small eared pot in the middle of the kitchen floor, then took a few broomsticks and tied them together end to end until the upper part reached all the way through the kitchen chimney, while at the lower end she tied a stirrer, letting it stand in the pot. Having contrived this gimmick, she took the boy into the kitchen and left him there. She herself went outside and hid behind the door, where she could see and hear through the crack between the jamb on the door. After a short while, She saw that the child began to toddle around the stirrer in the pot, examining it closely. Then he said, "I'm as old as witness my whiskers, a father of 18 in Elfland, but never in my life have I seen a pole so long in a pot so tiny." Hearing this, the woman returned to the kitchen with a hefty piece of birch, took the changeling, and whipped him long and hard, while he howled most dreadfully. After she had birched him for a while, she saw a strange woman enter the kitchen, a beautiful little boy on her arm, whom she kept kissing and cuddling. The stranger said, "How differently we behave. I fondle your child while you beat my husband." So saying, she put down the boy, the woman's son, leaving him there, and took her husband with her. They both disappeared instantly. The boy grew up with his mother, and he did become a very fine man. The end. I like that story. A little different because usually changelings are done at birth, but apparently not so, you know. Becoming a changeling can happen at any time, and it does not necessarily mean that you are not intelligent either, especially if the change happens later in life. You see, there's a story of changelings, and I know my mother used to, well, she still does, she still believes I was switched at birth, but I wasn't, but she believes that, because she swears that she had a boy, and I'm not her child. But when we say changeling, it's very hard to explain, because if it happens to a young child, then another fae will have made the change. However, there are adults that go their whole life and then they reach a certain age and something just switches inside them and they feel like they don't belong and they don't know what to do. And they just see things differently. Everything's very different. That's also what is known as a changeling. You come to your true form. You realise your true self. Anyway, yeah. Short story, I know. So we're going to read the next one. And the next one is called The Hired Hand and Lake Dwellers. There once was a rich farmer. Housing on his farm was both spacious and well maintained. The Badstofa was all panelled with also a beautiful wooden floor. There was one great drawback, however. Whoever remained at home on Christmas Eve would be found dead the morning after, and for this reason the farmer found it difficult to retain his hired people. No one wanted to stay at home that night, although somebody had to. Once, as so often before, the farmer hired himself a new shepherd, for he had a huge herd of sheep, and needed a vigorous man to attend them. The farmer told the young man, honestly. He was very open, and he did honestly tell him about the circumstances at his farm, including the drawback mentioned. But the shepherd avowed he paid little heed to such nonsense, and declared himself just as willing to enter the farmer's service for all that. The farmer then hired the man, and a mutual liking was soon established between them. Time now passed, and Christmas Eve arrived. The farmer and his household then prepared to go to services, all except the shepherd. He did not. The farmer asked him why he wasn't changing, to which the hired hand answered that he was going to stay home. It was not right, he said, to leave the farm unguarded and let the animals go along without any attention. The farmer begged him not to bother about that. He reminded him what he told him before, the story that nobody was safe in the house on Christmas Eve, because any living creature found inside it would be killed. He said he would not, under any circumstances, take that risk once more. The shepherd dismissed all that superstition and said he wanted to try. The farmer could not persuade him by any means. He left along with his other people, and the shepherd remained behind all alone. Once everybody was gone, the young man began to ponder and plan what to do, thinking that something must be amiss. He felt he had better be prepared for whatever might happen. The first thing he did was light candles all around the bastofa, so it was brightly lit. Then he started looking for a place to stay. Finally, he pried out 2 panels from the gable end of the room. He eased himself in through an opening and put the panels back in place so that nothing could be seen. And he did all this. Then he stood between the turf wall and the panelling, but through a crack between the boards he could see all around the bastofa. His dog lay asleep under one of the beds. Some time after that hired hand had thus settled in his hiding place, he saw 2 men, both strangers, and none were actually too pleasant in the way they were looking. They did enter the room. They looked all around it, and one of them sniffed. "Smells of humans. Smells of humans," he said. "No, there's nobody here," answered the other. Then they took lights and searched everywhere, both high and low, around the bastofa, and finally found the dog under the bed. They took the animal quickly, and they broke its neck and threw out the carcass. The higher hand praised his good luck for being where he was, for he realized that he wouldn't have had a prayer against those 2. After this, the bastofa filled with people. They put up tables and covered them. All their table settings were of silver, the plates as well as the knives and spoons. Then they loaded the tables with food and sat down to dine. These people had a roaring good time and made merry eating, drinking, and dancing all night long. 2 guards were posted to keep track of any human traffic and to watch for the break of day. They went out 3 times during the night, reporting back each time that they hadn't seen anybody about and that it was still not daybreak. When the shepherd judged that daybreak must be near, he decided to take things into his own hands. He grasped the 2 loose panels, jumped out on the floor, behaving wildly, banging the panels together and roaring at the top of his lungs, "Daybreak! Daybreak!" The strangers were so startled at this, they all scrambled to the door, one after the other, leaving all their belongings behind. The tables, the silverware, and the clothes they had doffed during the night while they were dancing. Some of them were injured, while others were stampeded to death. The hired hand chased them and kept slamming his panels together and shouting, "Daybreak! Daybreak!" until they reached a lake near the farm. There, all the people jumped in and vanished, and the shepherd then realized they were lake dwellers, water sprites. After this, the hired hand returned to the house, dragged out the dead, killed those that were still alive, and burned the corpses. Then he cleaned up the house, took all the silverware, clothes and other things and put them aside. When his master arrived, He showed him everything and told him the whole story of what had happened. The farmer said he was a man of great good luck, that things had turned out well for him. The hired hand took half of everything the lake dwellers had left, giving the rest to the farmer. It was a considerable fortune. The hired hand remained with the farmer several more years. He made money hand over fist and became a well-respected man. Never again were any of those strange happenings at the farm on Christmas Eve. The end. Ah, interesting. Well, lake dwellers, or the water sprites is what they call them, I guess, in Icelandic folktales. We have the kelpie and the sealy, the selkie and the kelpie, sorry. That's what we generally call them, but it's nice to know there's different names. That's the last one for this time. Thank you all for listening, and do hit that like because it is free. And many, many blessings.